Good evening, everybody. This is Chicago Computer Society Linux SIG meeting for May 2023. Tonight's topic is on browsers, and I have a reason for that I'll get to in a minute. I'm wondering if anybody has any tips besides myself to share with everybody else.
Well, I would say in a very closely related subject, the settings in YouTube, for example, which of course you run in a browser.
Okay. Well,
I changed those defaults.
the one tip I've got for tonight has to do with our illustrious software updating, and I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Okay. And boy, I hate these boxes. This is a pain in the derriere. Well, I got rid of some of it. Anyway, I'm going to come down here. This is our traditional software update manager. It's the same thing as the shield over here. And when it has a red dot, of course, that means you got an update available. I've been noticing, in particular, the last month or two, that I do have Flatpaks installed on the system. And even today, I had it come up saying I got one update. It's a Flatpak. Well, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, I started, when that comes up like that, hitting the refresh button. Why? Because when I did, it went out and checked everything. And I not only listed the Flatpak in every single occurrence, but I also had tons of other updates to apply basically at the same time. Unfortunately, the darn thing, if you say install the Flatpak without doing the refresh, what would have happened is that later on you would see the shield as a half shield again with a red dot, wanting to now do the other updates instead of getting it all done in one shot. So that's my little tip. My opinion, and this applied to anybody using Synaptics, always do a refresh under Synaptics. Is called a reload, so that it's updating its available library of updates and is now in sync with your system before you try and find out what is new and available for updating, and then do your install and get it all done in one shot. And you're only talking like to do a refresh and get everything, what, about 30 seconds, less than a minute. So it behooves you to say, okay, I'm going to do the refresh and see if you're showing me everything available. And it turned out with Mint that it was not telling me everything. And I've only noticed it so far in Mint, but I have not had a tremendous amount of time to play with some of my other distros. So that's one of the little caveats. Does anybody else have a tip that everybody should know about?
Well, Tim, it is necessary to refresh that, and it's nice to have an updater that will be aware of your flat packs.
Oh, yeah.
In Ubuntu, for example, if you use the regular updater, it's only aware of the synaptic updates.
Right.
But if you use the Software Center updater, Ubuntu software, those updates are aware of the flat packs that have been installed through the Software Center and the snaps.
Okay, that's
So
good.
again, it's one-stop shopping, but you do have to hit the refresh button.
That's a good tip because I do play with a little bit of the Ubuntu. I do use the software manager to do the updating through. And it's just a strange quirk with Mint, like I say, in the last month or two that I have not noticed before. And every time I've had updating in the past with Mint, I got everything in one shot. That was it. Done.
Yeah.
Gone. Forget it. And now all of a sudden it shows me one flat pack only. And I have had a couple occasions where it turned out after I did the refresh, I ended up not only with regular updates, I have the flat pack that it told me about, and on occasion, one or two additional flat packs.
Yep.
And it's like, what's going on here? What did they change in the updater that is so screwy right now compared to its normal behavior of the past?
And then there is the problem of whether or not to apply available upgrades. And these are usually going to show up only if you go into command line and do sudo apt upgrade. And what you will see is there are held packages. And there are sometimes reasons why they are held. They may conflict with something you've got in there. They may have the potential to break something you've got in there.
I haven't seen
And
that
that's
yet.
why you apply those only with caution.
Well, I've been doing more and more through the graphical updater, but I still, in some machines, some distros, have to fall back to command line, doing the update and upgrade.
Yeah, the upgrades will often be held if
Hmm.
you have anything that states that it requires a previous version. However, when you do the upgrade, you may find that nothing breaks. Sometimes just because it specifies Python 2 doesn't mean it won't run under Python 3, for example. But sometimes it won't.
That's interesting too. It's the only other issue I've had, and it's only on Windows. Uh, I've got a few machines where Windows Update wants to take and update some drivers for my touchpad. And when it installs the damn thing, I got no touchpad. And if you just uninstall the driver, it doesn't correct the problem. And so you can do a rollback or uninstall and reboot, and it's still broken. I have to do a complete delete removal, and then I have to install my backup copy of the touchpad software, the last version that does work correctly, and I'm back in business. But I'm sure there's some similar parallels in Linux and Mac OS as well.
Yeah, in Linux, the version may matter.
Yeah.
And that's why various upgrades are often held. Because the documentation in Linux is usually very good from the developers of any piece of software. Most are good. Some are very bad. But those who are good will specify what it depends on. And if they say it depends on an older version, apt will say, oh, maybe you don't want to upgrade this yet until they upgrade theirs.
Interesting.
I very rarely have found this to be the case, but sometimes you will run into a problem.
Well, I don't use bleach bit, but maybe once a month. And that would remove old dependencies that are no longer needed uh, to make space on your system. But if new updates were needing those, I can see where that would cause a problem.
Yeah, it's when a package gets downloaded and it specifies that it depends on. That's part of the package. And apt is aware of this behind the scenes under the hood. The place where you can see that is if you install something using GDebi and ask for the details, it will show you all this stuff as it flashes by. Depends on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can look at the description of anything before you install it in Linux and decide for yourself, is this going to break if I do that?
I've been
Normally, you don't have that problem.
I've been very lucky. Even when I'm on RPM bases or Arch, uh, but I have had on one machine that I play with Windows sometimes, and I play with either Linux on an internal disk or Linux on a USB external disk. Uh, I've crashed somehow the internal Linux disk. Fortunately, the Windows is not connected at the time, so it's okay. But I'm having to constantly switch back and forth between UEFI turned on for Windows and off for everything else. It's one of
Yeah,
those things.
that's the advantage of using Linux distros that can operate under UEFI and that can operate under Secure Boot,
Well,
especially as we move toward Windows 11.
well,
That's going to become more and more of an issue for
it's
those
going to be a
distros that
bigger
don't do
issue,
it.
yes. And but the thing is, uh, I get, I don't know about the rest of you guys, I get quite a number of ads uh, for computer hardware available uh, that's being sold at big discounts. Most of it will not run 11, but some of the prices are fantastic if you're looking for a machine to dedicate, say, to a Linux operating system.
Yeah.
But I already had enough of those machines, so I've been passing on that. I'd be interested
Hmm.
with an 11 capable laptop, because right now I only have desktops. I've got one Absolute. I've got another one that was giving me headaches. I initially started it up on 10, and it would not recognize it as legitimate. It wanted activation, wouldn't activate, and the motherboard since UEFI has existed, going back to Windows 8, 10, and 11, have a chip on board that has a digital license. And it's incorporated in the UEFI slash BIOS information. And that gives you legal license to run Windows 8, 10, or 11 without typing in a key like the old systems used to, 7 and prior. But this one wouldn't work. And so I finally broke down and I grabbed an old disk, retired, but it has Windows 10 on it, shoved it in place of the other drive, and it says, hey, this is Windows 11 compatible. You're ready to go. And I says, forget that right now. I'm not ready. I'm going to be trying to upgrade the processor before I go to 11. But I stuck the original drive back in its place, and I did an in-place upgrade on the running system. took care of the problem. I can't explain it, but for some reason, something was stuck in the original version that says this is not active, it won't be active, and it doesn't understand apparently the UEFI signature that says I should be a licensed user. I have no clue what happened there. I'm glad I haven't got that kind of an issue with Linux. Thank God. And I never even had that issue with my old Macs, as far as that goes.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
Linux isn't ever going to tell you, most Linux isn't ever going to tell you that it wants to activate.
Yeah, well, I hope not. There are a few that want you to upgrade to a supported version,
Right.
which, if you're a business, I understand. But if you're not a business, it's a headache with the pop-ups for, hey, by the way, how about spending some money here and getting the licensed version?
Yeah, Ubuntu is pushing an enhanced security version.
Well, there's another one too with Linux FX,
Yep.
and they're doing kind of the same model. At any rate, all right, I'm gonna get into browsers here, so I guess
Okay.
I'm gonna try and share my desktop again. I thought I stopped the sharing. Hang loose for a minute. Yeah, gotta. Well, ain't that something? Um,
Tim,
yep.
I saw a quick pop-up about a half a minute ago, 45 seconds, saying your internet connection was unstable.
I haven't seen any message here, and I usually do if I've got unstable internet.
Or was it popped up over the screen on mine?
Well, I'm running 3 desktops, and I see screens for 2 out of the 3, and I didn't see it. So, but I've got a problem here on the Linux Mint. It's not running something correctly because suddenly I stopped sharing, and the sucker is giving me a headache. So I'm gonna reboot on my Linux. So you're gonna have to be patient for a minute or two. That's a pain in the butt. I could do the demo on that without Linux, but I thought I'd do it from the Linux Mint desktop. Linux Mint, I find one headache is it is slow to start up.
One of your windows dropped.
Yeah, the one that rebooted, it just now dropped, and I'm still in the boot process of trying to bring it up. That's the one that dropped out. Man, I don't know why Mint is so slow to start up. when I've had a few minutes now and then, I happen to think of it and have tried to do some research, but I haven't found the total cause. And is there a way of stopping or dramatically reducing the amount of time it takes to boot up? Because it's as it's going through the boot up process, it's checking things out, and some things take up to 2 or 3 minutes possible that it's trying to check out before it continues on. And
Okay, the answer is this. There's a 90-second timeout for mounting drives under FSTAB in etc.
well, it could be, but boy, it's,
FSTAB.
man,
That's what the first listing under why is Mint so slow.
well, they need to do something about that. That's my opinion. All right, I've got the desktop up, so now I got to try and get back into the Linux. Oh, drop dead. Gee whiz.
And there's a little bit about process priority also in a few of the threads.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that besides FSTAB, it's also an issue with some other ones where it's, I don't know if it's trying to look for new devices or to make sure that it's playing nice or some darn thing. I haven't figured it out yet.
Are you using System D?
Yes, it is. Most of the distros have System D.
Yes, it works fine for me under Debian.
Yeah, most Debian distros will use that.
Okay, hang on a minute here while I finish.
And it's actually quicker than the other way in many systems.
Well, I think it's fast enough on my system. I have no complaints.
Well, yeah, but you're playing with a different distro than what I've got
Yeah, I'm
on here.
I'm running
That can make a big difference. If I want speed, I'll go to Arch. Arch Linuxes are the fastest versions of Linux going. There's one little caveat. It's also bleeding edge technology, and you never know when you're going to have a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I give you that a word of warning and advice. If you want to have blinding speed, you're probably wanting to look at an Arch Linux, but at the same time too, you may regret it if that's your only system. With me, I have numerous other systems, so if one's giving me headaches, if I don't put my foot through the unit, I'll go over to one of my other machines and continue on life from there. So now I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to start off with right now on this system, I have 3 browsers. The default Firefox, which I'll get to last, there's caveats why. Then I have Chromium browser, which I'm going to bring up now. The other one there is the blue circle with a blob of white on it that is Libre Wolf. And the only headache I got with this one here is the quantity of my screens is enormous here. Come on, play nice. As you can see, I'm a researcher, and I do not like bookmarks because I lose this stuff so badly. When I've used bookmarks in the past, it's not funny. So I have a preference of keeping tabs and that's where I get into a lot of extensions. I'm going to start out by going to the three vertical dots of Chromium. This applies almost 100% to Chrome and to a similar but different extent to Edge. Edge browser, I use that on a few of my Linuxes as well. There are characteristics I like. There's characteristics I don't like. At any rate, here's your Chromium setup. And every time I install a browser, I'm going through settings. A lot of people do not go through their settings. They don't know or understand, and they don't take time to do some research on some of the stuff. But I'm going to start out by clicking autofill. This is where your built-in password manager is, payment methods like credit cards, debit cards, and address and other personal information. I always go here and I shut them off. I don't want the internal password manager. I use a third-party password manager, and I don't want the interference of, do you want me to save this in the browser, which even though they added encryption many years back, I still don't trust it. That's my personal peeve. Then I back up with the arrow. I go to payment. I shut all of it off. If you're this option here is a convenience for the lazy people. If you if you can't go online and you're going to make a purchase with a credit card or take the risk of a debit card and put that information in when you need it, or the site has not kept track of the last credit card, debit card you used and already knows what it is, you're too damn lazy for your own good, is my opinion. So I clear that off. Addresses and information. This allows you to put in who you are, your physical address, maybe your phone number or phone numbers, etc., etc. Some people fill all this out, and I have never understood exactly why they want to do that when there's a high probability bad people can get that information quite easily, either through malware, hacking, or just doing some other little manipulations. By joining a meeting, they can perhaps hack you online. Privacy settings. Now this one here varies a little bit between the browsers. That includes Chrome, Chromium. Under Chrome, there's a slight difference. I don't have it loaded on here, so you're going to have to figure it out on your own. But I go to security setting, I scroll down, and the main one I'm after is it's defaults with your current service provider. If you got all the time in the world, you can leave that as is. If you want quicker response times, you go with about a half a dozen different third-party DNS services. That's what I prefer using. So I put click this radio button, and it gives you a drop-down list to choose from. One that used to work and then it stopped working, and I haven't gone back to it, is OpenDNS. I've used OpenDNS on most of my systems for God only knows how long. Then I used Cloudflare, and I've used Google Public, but then they added within 6 months or so this clean browsing family filter. So I've been going with that so far. I've had no problems with it. So it's one of these things where it tries to give you some extra security as well as trying to prevent some fraud from occurring. So that's one of my major ones I try and set up at all times. Performance, I haven't always used this. This has a new feature in Chromium. I don't exactly know how new it is. When Chromium frees up memory from inactive tabs, you can turn this on or off at your leisure. Basically, if you have a feature to put your tabs to sleep, with this feature on, that active RAM memory space becomes available for any other tabs you open up. And this is how I can have so many tabs. You saw here, well, if I come down here to the bottom, those are all pages I have open in Chromium, 7 of them. And all of them have umpteen tabs per. And that's not normally possible without putting a whole heck of a lot of tabs to sleep. So if they're not using the space, you just have a placeholder of the tab, its title, an icon if that site has an icon, and it has the URL. That's all it keeps in memory. When you click on that tab and I say, go ahead and activate the tab, it will wake it up and reload a fresh copy of that site. So I'm going to come over here to one of my tabs here. This is what it looks like. This is a sleeping tab, and it's a sleeping tab, I know, because I'm using a third-party extension, not what's built into the browser. And so I know it's asleep. If I click almost any place on this page, it wakes it up, it reloads very quickly, and there it is. It's ready to run. And I can do what I want to on that particular tab. So this is an area that you have to explore for your own purposes. What I'm showing you here too, not everybody's going to be 100% agreement with anything that I'm saying on settings and or extensions. I'm giving you an idea of what I have, what I use, why I'm using it, and this lets you make a decision. Is it right for you? Is it not right for you? Appearance. Now, in some of them like Edge, you can change folder colors, which doesn't exist in most of the other Chromium-based browsers. Most of the time, I do nothing on that page, unless it's in Edge. Search engine. Almost all Chromium browsers, with a few exceptions, will default to Google. I changed sometime last year, about the middle of the year, to DuckDuckGo because it's using Google search, but it's eliminating the feedback traffic to Google for its advertising stuff. And it shows very few ads compared to Google's search results. So I always change it, the search engine, to DuckDuckGo. It's up to you what you use. Default browser. This is personal preference. It's up to you whether you, what browser, if you have more than one, is your default browser. On startup, this is one major difference between me and I would say the majority of people I do help with their computers. I always select continue where I left off because I am a researcher. I keep my tabs until I feel I'm done with them. Then I deep six that tab. Otherwise, most people either open as a new tab page or open with a specific web page popping up. I never liked that one myself, but to each their own. Languages I never mess with. Downloads I leave the default, which is almost always your download folder. Accessibilities, now and then I will get into accessibilities, but it's rare, and it's usually to give me some kind of an enhancement that I need for that particular browser or for a specific website. System is the main one that I really do. With only a few exceptions of the browsers I've played with, and I've played with quite a few, they usually have continue running background apps when the browser is closed. I turn that off. Why? The people, especially like Edge, would be an example. Chrome is another good example. When they first load up on your system, let's just arbitrarily take a wild number of 1 gigabyte of memory space. When you X out of the browser, it only eliminates the UI interface, user interface, that displays the browser screen and content. And the rest of the code, which might be like, say, 800 megabytes, is still in core. Now, why would they want to do that? They're assuming you may be going in and out of your browser during your entire session, and a session is until you shut down the machine for the day or you stop using it. And so you're going to come back into the browser likely, and all they got to do is find and load the user interface for that browser and nothing else. So it's very, very fast and comes back very, very fast. But you pay the penalty depending on what you do on your computer, how much memory you have in the computer, and to me, it's an interference because it's locking up at least 80% of the space the browser is taking up in your RAM memory. That can force increased use of your page file in Windows. It's called a swap file in Linux. And you either have a swap file or a swap partition. In either case, those the use of the virtual memory, which is what a swap file or a page file are, takes up extra time and reduces overall system performance. So you want to have that minimized. And the only way I found is to turn this one feature off. If it has the use hardware acceleration where available, I always leave that on. If you have hardware acceleration available, it will improve your overall browser and system performance. Those are the main ones that I play with. So I'm going to go from settings to extensions. Now I got a bunch of them here, and some of them are on and off. This one here, recently I shut it off for space saving. But generally speaking, I have a rhyme and a reason for most things that are in here. Sticky notes, another one that's shut off. Occasionally I want sticky notes in the browser, and I'll come in, turn this on, do what I want to do. When I'm totally done, I will turn off sticky notes, and it doesn't take up any more real space and performance. So what do I have? My AV program of choice is a vast free version. I have that on Windows systems, and I know how to go into the settings and increase the security of a vast free. It doesn't run on any Linux version, and I'm not concerned. This is a vast online security. It will try and determine if you're going to a site that's bad, has a bad reputation, and it'll try and stop you from going to that site. Sometimes it has false positives. A lot of programs that try and protect you may have false positives. If you've used the site in the past that you're going to, odds are you can continue on to that site and do whatever it is you do on that site. But a lot of times it's a case where maybe you did a typo in the URL line, and this is stopping you from going to a clone site with a bad reputation. A typo, as an example. A person, and this is a long time ago, but it's to the best of my knowledge, it may still exist. I haven't checked it in a long time. They wanted to go to whitehouse.gov, i.e. our federal government. And instead, they typed in the URL line whitehouse.com and ended up at a porn site. If you have certain protections on in your browser, it could stop you from going into that site, make you stare at that URL and see that you typed the wrong ending, and you should have put in .gov, not .com. But these days, there are tons more of extensions that are a problem. I use Canvas Fingerprint Defender. It tries to block a lot of browsers at sites that you go to from getting all the information about your computer, your browser, etc., as much information as it can get. I don't contend it is perfect, but it's something that helps privacy. WebGL came along with Microsoft going to Edge Chromium-based browser, and I added that one in also for the same kind of a reason, to try and block as much as possible. To get maximum effect for these two extensions, you have to buy the paid version, but even the free version does some good. It's up to you, the individual. I'm going to skip this one till last. Ghostery. That's my choice for a ad blocker program. There are jillions of them out there. Pick whatever one you want, but that happens to be my current choice. I also add in for better than a year now, Grammarly. Grammarly will help you if you're using your browser to access your email, and it'll help point out errors in your spelling and grammar that it recommends you do. But if you're too fast at clicking the send button, you may not see everything that Grammarly would suggest. So when you think you've got everything that it does show you addressed, I'd wait maybe 1 minute before I hit the send button because other things may pop up. Another one that used to be active, but I've deactivated on almost all and done a remove, is this HTTPS everywhere. The reason the EFI consortium deems this no longer needed, there are settings within the browsers now that make this particular extension obsolete. I didn't remove it out of here deliberately right now so I could show you that if you have HTTPS everywhere, I would take it out. It's useless. LastPass is my password manager. I still use it. I haven't had anything indicating I've had any data breaches whatsoever. So I'm not as concerned as some other people have been. I think too many people panic. Like I saw on the news today, a picture appeared about some kind of a explosion around the White House, and suddenly the stock market took a crash. So that's they are judging it to be a case where it looks so real, possibly due to AI. We don't know, and it'll probably take them time to figure out for certain. Another safety net one is Malwarebytes Browser Guard. I add that into my browsers because it's even better than Avast online security at catching possible bad sites that you're headed towards, but it does get false positives, like I mentioned before. Script safe. This one I do not recommend for the majority of people. Apparently I'm masochistic. That or I have a lot of patience. Script safe and in Windows, in Firefox, they have I can't think of the darn name right now, but at any rate, what it does is it blocks out all URLs so that if you go to a site, you may get at least the first screen of that website, and in some cases you'll see nothing but a white screen. Well, the reason for it is the URLs, and it gives you the ability to fine control what is turned on and what is not. I can usually work out turning on temporarily a lot of settings that are for content and how to display the content, and leave disabled all the ad sites. That way the ads aren't coming in, they're not taking up space in your system, and they are not slowing down your access of the information you do want. So that's my opinion on that one. But my opinion is you'd be lucky if half of 1% of the people would tolerate this. Next is Session Buddy. This is an oddity that I came across on Chromebooks. And by the way, I do all these settings on Windows, Mac, at least the old Macs that I used to have, and Linux, and Chromebooks. And Session Buddy is one of the few things I can rely upon on saving what's going on. That's its emblem. It says right now I have a total of 166 tabs open in 7 windows in Chromium OS. And this is what they are per window. I can do my own restore points or save screens by just clicking here on save. I put in a title like restore point or save data, and I put the day's date in there in month, day, year sequence, and then I click OK, and it will create an entry down here like this one here from back in January. These are, I guarantee you, obsolete. I only do these once in a while on some systems. On other systems, I do them fairly frequently, especially a Chromebook. Chromebooks don't have a regular backup method. This is the closest thing I've got to backing up, and that's not a joke. And periodically on a Chromebook, I'll come up here to the little gear up here, and I will, in a Chromebook, do an export and save that off onto a micro USB drive or a full SD card so that I don't lose that information. But I've had one disaster where even that got wiped out. So you gotta do what you can and hope everything works out. But Session Buddy seems to be a real good one in some instances. If I wanted to right now, I could say, okay, I'm going to close all these windows except for one, and yet I won't lose anything. By doing a save, I'm going to say restore. Whoops, wrong keyboard. This is a problem with having multiple computers, multiple displays, multiple mices. Anyway, today is the 22nd or 3rd? 22nd. No, 23rd.
23rd.
Yeah, I figured it out. Thank you. And now it highlights the restore point I just created, which is good because then I can, if I want to, scroll through it. I've never had it fail yet. So that's good. But for like when I'm doing my more FYIs, I always got to make sure I click back here because this is the current information. And when I'm doing a more FYI, I'm taking groups of entries and putting them together for one of the publications. So I got that. So now if I want to, I can start. Now I don't want to do the this one here because that's the current window I've got going. But I can come back down to here, and I can do an X here, and I can say close the window. And that window's gone. I can do the same thing on this one here. Oops. My mouse is starting to give me a little hit. And same for here. And same for here. Same for here. And same for here. Now all I've got left is down here. If I come down to the Chromium tab, it says I only got one window open. That's it. Now how do I get back to where I was? I go to the restore point I created, and I don't want this particular window because it's already there and it's open. So I go to each window following it, and I double click on the window label, and bring it up. And that's all I've got to do to recover that window that I already deleted. And I just keep going down the list for any windows I want. And maybe I don't want all these windows. Maybe I only wanted that one window in addition to the window that's displaying here right now. That's my choice, and I have flexibility in what I can do without having really lost anything other than a little bit of time to do the restore. Now, if you have a slow internet connection, it's going to take you a little longer to restore a page full of tabs, even though all of these are asleep. And that gets eventually back into these extensions. And I'll be showing you doing the extensions. The other one that I have, and this is the one that does the dirty work. The person who created this one here originally created the Great Suspender. Then he sold it to somebody. That person did some nefarious things, and even Google not only threw them off the store, they forcibly removed the Great Suspender on any browser that came up that it could detect it on, and just forcibly removed it because they considered it very malicious. So the originator of the program came back with his original code and relabeled it the Marvelous Suspender. So what does it do? I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna just highlight a few of these tabs here, and I got 4 tabs selected. So I click on this little icon here. I can say never suspend them. That's not going to be the case. I can unsuspend the 4 tabs, or if they were all open, I can suspend the selected tabs. Now, I can also say, okay, assume all the other tabs not highlighted right now are open. I can say suspend all the other tabs. Or I can say, I don't want the 4 tabs that are highlighted. I want all the other ones unsuspended and active. So that gives me a lot of flexibility on controlling what is active and what is not. And I just clicked on the body here. It opened up only the 1 tab out of the 4. So if I come back over here to this icon for the Marvelous Suspender, I can say suspend this tab now. It knows I am pointing to the 1 tab that came alive, and I say suspend it. That's it. The only thing that's left of that website is the tab, the icon for the tab, the title of the website, and the URL for the tab site is encrypted in this here. It changed what the URL was to this here. When you wake up the tab, it knows what to change it back to give you the site that it's supposed to be showing you. Now, those are the main tabs for almost any Chromium-based browser. Now, in most of them, I can come over here when I'm on the extensions, and I can access extension also by the 3 dots and come down in Chrome, and some of the Chromiums, it says more tools, and then you'll find extensions. But in other Chromium ones, you may see extensions listed, or in like Firefox, it says add-ons and themes. That's the same basic thing. So I'm in the extensions anyhow. So I'll come over to the hamburgers on the left side. I'll click that, come down, open the Chrome Web Store. And let's take here, for example. Oops, again, wrong keyboard. Session Buddy, it'll say it's already, the little green ribbon means I've already got it installed, but that's what it is. You click on it, and instead of saying remove from Chrome, it would say add to Chrome, and then you have to confirm your add, and it'll download it, bring it in, install it. But it doesn't always show you the icon up here, which I prefer. You have to come to the little cookie or puzzle piece. Some call it a cookie, some call it a puzzle piece. In either case, in many of the Chromium ones, they use a push pin. I don't want Canvas Fingerprint and WebGL showing, but everything else I do want showing, but I can hide any of them at any time by just clicking on the push pin for that item, and it'll either turn it off or turn it on and display it. In some versions of Chrome, it will take two items and put them below Manage Extensions line, so you have to scroll down to see the pins for those if you want them turned on. And the Marvelous Suspender in Chrome is down below, along with Session Buddy. What that means, I haven't got a clue. I haven't taken the time to figure that part out. And it doesn't concern me. I just know that it's there. So I like seeing most of mine up here. This is a Avast here saying I've got one SafeScript rather. SafeScript. This is what it's showing right now. Not filtering on that site. Well, the site is Chrome Web Store. That's why. And if I come over to one of these other ones here and click that, this is what shows up on SafeScript. Oh, the one for Firefox is no tabs or something close to that. And I said, I'm gonna for this one here, I allow it, and I for here links duckduckgo.com. They could be for ads. I don't need them, so I ignore it. I could click on temporary to see what happens. I don't, but duckduckgo.com has 13 entries, and I have to allow them to make it fully functional. So these are some of the things about SafeScript and why most people would not want to mess with it, because they're going to sit down, forget that they have it until it really gets ingrained in their head, and they're going to be very, very unhappy campers. This is the general feel of that particular scenario of Chromium-based browsers. Now, there are some Chromium-based browsers. Avast is one, and there's a few others. They don't want you to install extensions, and so they try and block you. How do you deal with that situation? Okay, I'm going to close a few of these here. By the way, this one tab that's still showing its content, after a set number of minutes, of no activity on the page, the tab will be put to sleep automatically. In a new tab here, I'm going to show you what I do when I have a browser on Chromium base that doesn't want you to add extensions, but you can go ahead and add them anyhow. And I usually only limit them. I put in Chrome, Web, Browser, hit enter. And the very first entry is the one I'm looking for. And I click it. And that gets me, now there's no place like Chrome. Ha ha ha. That's the first time it did that for me. I'm going to back up. Chrome web browser. Oh, I said Chrome download. Excuse me. This put in some extra ones today. Oh, I understand what happened. I put in browser. Sorry, my mistake. I want store, web store. There's the web store. Sheesh. All right, and I'm clicking that, and this is a normal web store. Now, usually in a browser that doesn't want me to add extensions, a browser to me where I cannot have access to my password manager is useless to me. So I put in the my password manager as one extension, and I put in Malwarebytes as another at minimum. I try and limit what I do put in on browsers like that because they're trying to protect your privacy and security to begin with. So I take them at their word. They're not just doing it for the heck of it. Now, I'm going to close that tab, and I'm going to minimize that. And I'm going to come down here to my bar, and I'm going to bring up LibreWolf. LibreWolf and a few other browsers. This one's based on Firefox. There's also Pale Moon, WaterFox, and a few other browsers. There's not a lot like there is in Chromium based. Chromium base has tons and tons of browsers to choose from with different characteristics. But as you can see, I did add extensions, and it didn't want them. This little piece here, this is a puzzle piece, and I click on it, and it shows me what I have installed. Only this one here came pre-installed with LibreWolf. I added the other three. And in this case here, I added Grammarly because I might use access my email, and I use it because I'm a lousy writer to start with. So that's an issue there. As far as settings, this is like Firefox. So you come down, and this add-ons and themes is where extensions are available. But it only shows you this screen here, and it may show you recommendations down below here. And that's up to you whether or not you want to have what they recommend as extensions. Otherwise, you come up here and say something like, oops, malware bytes. I can do some abbreviation. I don't have to spell everything out. And it goes out and it says, oh, are you talking about Malwarebytes browser guard? In this case, the answer is yes. I would go there and it would add that to the browser. The bad part on LibreWolf is it's not recognizing that it's already in. It should say remove from Firefox. So that's apparently a little bug in LibreWolf, but it gives you the idea of how did I get them there. And when it's you've added it in, you get rid of a little message here with an OK button. I click that, and I can ask for another entry, like, oops, darn it, I keep wanting to do a different, oops. Okay, I just typed in that much there, and it says Avast Online Security. I could hit enter, and that's what'll show up, or I can, from this drop down list now, for the second and beyond extensions, just click the one I want. So if I click that one, now I could add this one if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. The one that seems to come up a little differently is Grammarly. Something else comes up here on only Firefox-based browsers. It says grammar and spelling checker, which is not what I want. I want Grammarly, so I have to select the second one. And again, it wants to add it even though it's already up here. So they got a small bug, but reporting it wouldn't do any good. They don't want you putting in these extensions to start with. LibreWolf, its characteristic is whatever browsing you do with this browser, as soon as you close the browser, it forgets anything and everything you did. If there were any cookies that were downloaded, it blows them away. If you're thinking of other trace materials, they're all gone too. So it can be a high privacy browser to use, but without my password manager access, I wouldn't know how to get into any of my sites without a lot of headaches. So I'm closing that one off, and I'll actually bring up Firefox itself, and I'll come up here, go to the hamburger, come down to settings. All right, now on the general page, usually the second checkbox there, always check if Firefox as the default browser, is checked off. I always uncheck it. I will make my own decision what is my default browser. I always do check the first one. Why? Because I'm a researcher that wants to leave open windows, open tabs. And I want to be able to restore the previous session if I come back to this browser with new research or checking on previous stuff I already did look up. As far as most of the other settings on this page, a lot of it I consider personal preference. It's best that each person go through the settings, just like on the Chromium base, and they have to make decisions what they want. Smooth scrolling is something that I like on any browser because I want to be able to read to some extent text as I am scrolling through the browser. But the main one is this last one. It says Network Settings with a button called Settings. I click it. This gives you the ability to set up a proxy server if you use one. That's usually something found in business. I left this one exactly the way it was. I normally come down here and say enable DNS to go over HTTPS so that my DNS lookup of a URL is encrypted and therefore a little bit more private than it otherwise would be. That is a security feature. And then click OK. Come back to this one here. Home, I consider that, again, one of those that's a personal preference. You look through this stuff, you decide what you want. Search, again, I changed this to DuckDuckGo. I've seen a few that will bring up Bing, Yahoo, and besides Google, but I haven't seen one default to DuckDuckGo as the current situation. I also leave pretty much everything else alone, but if there's something there that you want to change, go for it. Such as adding the search bar in the toolbar. I think that's superfluous. I use the address bar not only to type in URLs, but my search values. I prefer it that way versus the search bar like in a Google new tab screen. I don't use that. That's personal preference. Pick your own poison. Privacy and security. I usually leave it at standard. It's up to you whether you want to go to strict or custom, enhanced tracking protection, things like that. You got to understand if you start having problems, it may be something you did, and it depends upon your memory. Some people, before they do any kind of settings changes, they create a journal. And in the journal, they'll put down how they got to a particular setting, what the name of the setting is, and what they changed it from, so that if they're having problems, they can go back through the journal and undo everything they did change. That's something to consider. I come down here always. It says login passwords. I uncheck that. It kind of grays these out here, but I leave show alerts about passwords for breached websites. To the best of my knowledge, I've never had such an alert. Now, the other one I come down to, and this again left this way, I normally will uncheck this to take forms and autofill out of the equation, since I usually turn that those features off. In Firefox, I don't have an explicit off switch. So if it's saved addresses and credit card information, the only thing I can do is come over here to review them and delete them. But since I normally don't put in addresses and I don't put in the credit cards, I don't worry about that. So then I come down again towards the bottom. Again, I left this as is. This is the way it normally would show. Do not enable HTTPS only mode. That's a mistake. If you type in an HTTP only address, which Google won't let you do, you're taking risk that you are going to a bad site, because a lot of the bad sites only have HTTP, and they're not going to pop for an HTTPS certificate to have encrypted security on their websites. So I always change this to enable only HTTPS mode in all windows, period. There is the option here of enabling HTTPS only mode only when you're using a private window. Some of you may not know, but there are options in almost all the browsers. In Firefox base, you have a private windows. In Chromium and Chrome base, you have incognito. It's the same thing. This emulates LibraWolf in trying to eliminate all your tracks on your system of what you're trying to browse. When you close that browser, it all disappears because they don't record it. So these are some of the settings that I do. Adding the extensions up here works virtually the same as in LibraWolf, with one exception that's fairly new. They now, instead of having like an edge, an eye with a line through it, meaning I'm not displaying it, you click it, it turns into an eye that's open, and it will show the icon. In some of the Chromium, other Chromium-based programs, you have the push pin. If it's a white pin, it's not showing the icon on your bar up here. If, on the other hand, you have a blue pin, that's showing that icon for that extension up on your bar. In here, they use the gear now in Firefox. You click it, and you have to be a little careful. Many of the extensions I have up here, the top entry is pinned to the toolbar, which is what I want. But a few of them have one or two lines here of other options I don't want. And if I am too fast for my own good, I'm accidentally clicking on one of those and wondering what happened for at least a moment before I realized, oh, it didn't. I must have had extra options here before the pin to the toolbar. And it's easy to undo, and it's easy to be a little too quick in your selection. Now, I don't know what else I can show you at the moment on browsers per se, but the reason why I brought this up, in the distant past, most of what we did on the computers is load up a standalone program on our computers, and you did most of your work from these standalone applications and only use the browsers to surf the web or use a web-based email client, and not much more. Nowadays, almost everything goes through the web, and there's less and less standalone applications that you are loading in your computer that you use anywhere like we used to use, say, a couple decades back. So this browsers is not only the most used application, whether you're on Linux, Windows, or a Mac, but it's also indicative of the fact that browsers are cross-platform. they don't care what your operating system is. They have usually a browser for any computing device. And I can't speak for the phones because I don't use a browser on my phone, but tablets and laptops, any form of desktop, whether it's a mini desktop, a small form factor desktop, or a full-size desktop, it's a case where the browser settings and extensions in one platform like Linux are exactly the same in Windows and Mac OS also. So for me, I set them up pretty much the same way, unless I have a specific reason, on all my OSs, on all my computers, regardless of what they are, and that includes Chromebooks. But like I said, on a phone, I haven't tried it out there. There may be restrictions on settings or different settings available there. They may or may not allow some or any of the extensions. I don't know. You'll have to check that one out yourself. Has anybody got any questions at this time on browsers and what I've presented to you so far? Is there anybody awake?
Well,
Yes.
I'm awake. I would say I use the Brave browser because I think it just promises to more or less do these security things and block the ads. I don't know if that's really true.
Well, that's part of the problem. And you are aware that Brave browser is a Chinese-based browser,
Okay, so it's based on Chromium, which is based on Chrome.
which is a public domain, meaning
Yeah,
that
it's
anybody can
open
use it.
source. It's open source, so as far as I know, all the source code that goes into the Brave browser, just like Chromium, is publicly available for.
But whoever the developer is that's using the open source has the right to make their own changes. And being it's based in China, Peking specifically, I'm dubious of using Brave browser. Other people like you are using Brave browser. I've known quite a number of people that are still using it today. But no browser covers all the bases. So that's why
I'm sure that, yeah.
that's why I go through settings. I have a routine of what I want to change in settings to protect me more than whatever the default is. I add extensions that either give me protection or some functionality that otherwise is not in that particular browser.
Well, part of the objection to Zoom is that it's a Chinese plant. I don't know. They've open sourced Zoom, as far as I know, at least the free part that we're using.
But it's governed by supposedly a U.S. based company,
Yeah.
I think in San Francisco, if I'm
Yes.
remembering correctly. And they have the right to take that open source and modify it accordingly. Now, when Zoom first started out in with people in 2020 with the pandemic, it was not the greatest video conferencing program, had lots of security issues. And the dramatic number of changes Zoom made to the code is quite dramatic. Kind of like what Microsoft did with Edge Chromium. They took the basic Chromium, and you wouldn't recognize, if you look at Edge browser today and look at basic Chromium browser, you wouldn't know the two were the same thing. They have some similarities, yes, but they have tremendous differences. And that is the license that the developer has of taking the source code and being able to modify it, put it out as a new labeled program that people have a choice to use. Then they got to advertise and market the damn thing to try and get more and more people to use their particular product. It's easier for Microsoft and Google. They're big corporations.
Well, I understand it that if you embed open source code in your product, you can do so. But if you change any of the open source code, you must make those changes publicly available. Is that right?
In some cases, I would say that's true, but I would not say that that's carte blanche. I don't think Microsoft is making Edge publicly available source code. And there are some other Chromium-based browsers that are doing the same kind of changes, and I don't think all of them are publicly available for download as the source code, so I can see what they did, maybe make a slight modified version, leave it in open source, and say, hey, here's a new browser, XYZ, try it out. You might like it. It's very similar to this browser over here.
Well, I understand the GPL license, and there's many other licenses besides that, you know, MIT and all that. You can make use of the source code and therefore produce some enhanced use of it that gives it a different look and feel or so on.
Right.
But you still, if you change the code that came to you as under an open or a GPL license, it's my understanding that you will be sued if you do not post the changes you made to it. Maybe
Okay.
I'm naive, but that's my understanding.
Okay. How about for the rest of the group, you go out to Microsoft and see if you can download Edge Chromium source code. If you can get to it, then they did follow the proper open license
yes, I would
practice.
think.
If you cannot download it, then and by the way, part of this gets into even Apple's software. They took open source software and they made a whole new system out of it, and I don't think you can download their code.
Not all their code, but the part of the GPL license code that they changed, if any. In other words, it's not the work you did with.
Well, yeah, but if they enhance features and or look and feel, it would have to be published also. It cannot be kept as a secret proprietary code. There's no way of unlinking it, because if I take the code that they are making available to the public and I try and compile it and use it, it's not going to have all the features and look and feel, and it may not even successfully compile.
Well, the whole idea is not to prevent the open source code from being used, but if you enhance it, then you must make that also open source.
Well, like I said,
that would mean that everybody that has a paid version of Linux has got to publish all the source code for all the paid versions.
yes. Technically, that's what it is supposed to be.
I think it isn't all that Unix stuff up on GitHub.
I wouldn't say all, but a lot of it, yes, because GitHub is a developer's platform for developing software, and most of all that out there is open source. But at the same time, too, you don't see, I don't think, Edge Chromium browser out there. I could be wrong, but I haven't found it as yet. And there's other pieces of software that, trust me, started out in open source and is not available for all the changes they did. They do make some of the changes available. Even Chrome browser, by the way, is based on Chromium open source browser. But Chrome is not open source. Why? Are you going to sue Google over Chrome violating the GPL? Are you going to try and sue Microsoft for violating the open GPL licensing?
All I'm saying is the block of code that was under a GPL license, you change a line in there, and that line that you changed, the changes you made there, that has to be open source. It's not the whole environment that used that open source, like the whole browser. They don't have to open source the Edge browser just because they use open source components in there. And in fact,
I understand where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from.
I think
but
there's been great misunderstanding of open source in this regard.
that's a possibility, but there are ways the legal teams of some of these outfits get around using the open source and make it private.
I don't doubt that.
And so bottom line is, it's a good practice and concept of what you're saying. I agree with it. But not everybody is practicing it as it was intended.
Well,
that's what I'm getting across.
I think it was to great advantage of companies, I'll say Microsoft, just as an put out fear, uncertainty, doubt. If you touch an open source component into your program product, your entire product becomes open source, and you won't be able to make any money out of it because everybody in the world will just download it and use it themselves.
Well, Microsoft is not charging you a cent for Edge Chromium. It is free. They want you to use it very badly. And same for Google with Chrome. They don't charge for that.
Google
but they are not open right now for the versions that you see and use now. But their origins are the open source Chromium, and they take any development of the open source and incorporate it into their product. Bob?
Yes, they do.
Okay, what we're not understanding between the two of you is that one of you is saying open source or open source components. Those do follow whatever license they were originally filed under, which is either GPL, MIT, whatever. MIT license does allow you to make some proprietary code. But anyway, MIT is not as strict as GPL about it. You have to publish and you have to let people modify. But that being as it is, products based on open source or incorporating open source components, only that which is still the open source component is publicly available and may be
Yes.
modified by the user. And
Yes.
yes, that may be modified. There are actually some parts of Windows that are still like that.
It could be.
And there are some parts of the Apple operating systems that
I'm
are
sure.
like that. There's
Yes,
part of the Chrome browser that is like that.
sure.
But if you want a fully functioning, complete piece of software, or a fully functioning, complete operating system, if you want to be able to treat it as open source, you have to go with something that is fully open source. The
GPL.
distinction is between open source versus free libre open source.
Yes, there's all
Free
kinds of-
libre is completely fully available, and anything you contribute to it becomes community property.
Right.
Creative Commons license is a little bit like that too.
Yeah,
But everything else that is called open source can be so proprietary that you wouldn't succeed in modifying it.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Yes, it's a great concept. Yes, it's still, at least in part, still available even in what is a proprietary product that used it as a starting point. That's what they are doing, is they're using it as a starting point and then making customizations that stay proprietary. Bob Baxter, do you have a comment?
Yes, Tim, I just wanted to thank you. I have to confess, this has got to be one of the most complete explanations of all the ins and outs of browser usage. Amazing.
Well,
I have one question. You're recording this. Will this be available?
yes, it will.
Okay. And will you send me a link when you send out the notes? Or I looked at your website and it doesn't show any place where I could get it.
Oh, yes, it is. You go out to YouTube.
To YouTube. Okay.
YouTube, type in the search Chicago Computer Society. You go to click on that, and then I change the tab up at the top to player view. It'll show you each of the groups, and then I click on the view playlist that's in blue underneath each group to see the playlist without it launching the one that's on top and then expecting to play each one after that that exists out there per group.
Okay.
This
I couldn't take enough notes to keep up with everything you were doing.
well,
Marvelous.
I understand, and the software right now, tonight's video. Let's see. Sanford is in the hospital up in Mayo, getting some tests done. It may be like next week or something like that before it gets loaded up to the YouTube channel. But if I remember to, I'll add you as a link. Anybody else wants a copy of this, that's fine. The browsers, I did this because it is cross-platform. Whatever I do in one platform, I do in all of them. I try and do the same thing in LibreOffice, another open source program that's a suite for productivity, with a word processing program, a spreadsheet program, and a pseudo PowerPoint type program, and a few additional programs. But it's mostly compatible with Word format if you want it to. Does a pretty darn good job in Excel, and it does a so-so job with PowerPoint. They need a lot of improvement there. But again, you have to be careful because there are hawks looking at all this changes to try and do some kind of a lawsuit like we used to have between Apple and Microsoft alone decades ago. And you don't hear too many of those cases any longer because they found out through court cases what they can get away with and what they cannot get away with. And as long as they stay away from the can't get away from stuff, well, usually there aren't any suits and court appearances. So it's one of these cases where you learn through trial and error in a couple decades back. Nowadays, you don't hear too much of it. Everybody's figuring out their own way of getting something like something else done by some other developer. And even there, Bob's Premix brought up before, there are ways around a lot of issues in different versions of even Linux to be able to select settings. And that's the other thing I was trying to bring out. So many people use these programs as though they are pristine and perfect in every way, shape, or form. They just install them on their system, use them as is, that's it. What I put in is features that either enhance my protection while I'm online and or give me enhancements to be able to do things the particular program application does not do. I brought up early in the meeting that I use Avast Free on Windows. I don't use Windows Defender. If you go into the settings, protections, the first two items in protection give you a lot of options that allow you to adjust features in the AV program to enhance your individual protection that are turned off. And it used to be, and I don't know if it still is, the practice, a lot of developers would put a lot of features in their applications, but they turn off most of them, knowing that most people are not going to go into the settings and change anything. And that means they don't have to have much in the way of customer support because they're not going to be asked questions. They're not going to be inundated with, I got this problem, I got that problem, and people to try and resolve those issues. If you go in and change the settings, who's responsible? You. You change the setting, therefore you are responsible if it does something on your system you don't like or want. You go in, change that setting back to what it was, your problem disappears. It's that simple. But I do caution people until they get into a rhythm of things, and depending on how they feel their memory is, only do 1, 2, no more than 3 changes at a time and see what happens, because you're likely to be able to remember up to 3 different changes, so that if there's something wrong or you don't like, you can go back and undo one or all of them. Then once you've got that issue out of the way, you can go on to other settings and do another 1, 2, or 3 settings. And you keep doing that until you get it all done. And same for extensions. I would have to say, except for the Great Suspender, and that was a sold product modified by the new owner, I haven't had any extensions that I have put on my browsers in more than 2 decades that have ever been listed as something that should be removed as being dangerous or suspicious activity. And yet on smartphones, I see articles quite frequently that say, hey, if you've got any of these applications on your smartphone, get rid of them as soon as possible. So this is the frame of mind I have. I'm trying to enhance the product safely and add protection to me so I don't end up getting infected. I try and reduce the amount of information some website can collect on me that identifies me as a repeating customer. Bob Primick?
Yeah. With regard to keeping track of your experiments and the results, I keep actual typed notes, which I back up with my data.
Right.
And it's what I refer to as a user log. But if you were developing software, you would refer to that as a change log.
Right.
And you then note what happened when you did it, and if it didn't work out, you make a note, don't do that again.
Right.
And
I agree with that.
this also goes along with keeping a backup so that you can revert.
Right.
With Windows, you can make a restore point. In
Right.
Linux, there are ways of doing something similar,
Yes.
but that's with specialized software.
Right. That's time shift. Time shift.
Timeshift will do that. Deja Dupe will do that. A few
Yeah.
others.
Yeah. Deja vu seems to be old hat compared to time shift.
Yeah, Deja Dupe does something more specific than
Right.
Timeshift. Although you can set Timeshift, you can choose your settings and
Right.
only back up what you really need to based on the experiments you're doing.
Right. It's just a case where I'm bringing to the group and anybody else who happens to watch the video that there's a world beyond just installing almost any application that allows you to get more out of it, but it was not enabled when you installed the program to reduce the developer's headache of customer support if people turned on a feature and on their system it caused a problem, whereas 10 other people turned on the same feature and had no problem. That's the basic idea I understood it to be going back at least 2 decades or more from the developers' standpoint. They want to minimize their headaches, so they turn off the features. Only those people who go venturing into the settings turn things on. Usually they can figure out, oh, I don't like that, or oh, that caused the program to crash. So if I can get back into it, I'll undo that setting that I just did, and hopefully everything's back to normal. And the extensions, they could have, instead of calling it extensions, they could have called it enhancements, as far as I'm concerned, because that's what the extensions are. They are enhancing security. They are enhancing other features that are not in the current program, whether it's the web browser, LibreOffice, or many other applications. And this applies to Windows, Mac, and Linux. And the vast majority of people just are oblivious to all these different settings. They don't understand a lot of it, but they also will not try and do the equivalent of Google search to find out, what is this about? And do I want it or not? Because it takes time. And the first thing you usually hear out of a lot of people, especially who don't do backups, is, I don't have that kind of time. I don't want to mess with it. I don't, just let me do what I'm doing. And then when everything goes to hell, I'm going to blame anybody else but the person I see in the mirror. Good luck. And I know of a local tech to my neck of the woods, who one day he had a brick and mortar shop, and a customer came in, happened to have all I'm going to say is a Mac. I don't know if it was a simple Mac, a Mac Air, or a Mac Pro laptop computer. Got hit with ransomware. Well, ma'am, do you have a backup? No backup. Well, one of my I can't do anything with this. It's all encrypted right now. Your only two options are you pay whatever the ransom is, which I don't think she could afford. The owner was a woman, and she had no backups. So what's she supposed to do? I got tons and tons of family photos. I need them back. Well, sorry. There isn't anything that quite often can be done. Now, some of the ransomware, I can tell you flat out, some security companies have cracked the encryption and or keys, and they offer for free the software online, so that if you got that particular ransomware, you might be able to undo all the encryption and get your system back to normal. But you better change your practices on what you do and what you don't do, because otherwise you're going to get hit again with ransomware, and that code to decrypt it may not be available at this time. It may never be available, because they keep pushing the envelope higher, higher, and higher. And you got to have more and more powerful programs and computers to crack that stuff, and be able to provide some application that will undo the ransomware. But most recently, I published in More FYIs. Oh, Bob Baxter, you may not know what I'm talking about, so I'll mention that afterwards. In the More FYIs, Dallas, Texas, the whole municipality has been hit with ransomware, and they hadn't solved it after a week. I don't know if it's yet solved completely, but it literally locked up all the computers, including in the police department, etc. So they had a great deal of difficulty, and whether they've gotten out from under that yet or not, I don't know. I don't know what their backup practices were. You would think they would have good, solid backups. For Bob Baxter, he's the newest person here, but Earl, you too. I used to do almost every day of the week what's called a More FYI. It's a publishing document of articles I farm in my plethora of open windows, open tabs, and these articles right now are pretty dated, because it's gotten to a point where I'm lucky to get out one or two More FYIs a week, and I've had as much as over a month go by with no publications. But roughly, you get about 100 articles. They cover Windows, Mac OS, Linux, security issues that you should be aware of. Not that you may be in a position to do anything about them. Part of the problem is goes back, I don't know how far, maybe close to a century. Forewarned is forearmed is an old expression. If you know about something, at least you are armed with that information, and you might be able to avoid a big problem. If you don't know about problems, it's a surprise. I didn't know anything about that, but look at all the people out there that don't listen to the news at all and have no idea what the heck's going on, even to weather reports. And they're completely oblivious to things that they could potentially avoid, but didn't, and got mixed up in something. And I don't know what you do with people like that. People who want to stay ignorant of what the hell's going on around them. I guess follow the old Christmas time philosophy. Happiness is bliss. Bliss meaning they're ignorant of what's going on, therefore they're happy until something bad happens that they could have avoided in the first place by knowing what's going on. So if anybody that doesn't know about more FYs would like to see them, I have published a few in the past to everybody that's on the mailing list. But otherwise, you send a email to Beata Kernan at 1ccsadmin@comcast.net, and she'll put you, you specify who you are, your email address, and that you want to be put on the More FYI mailing list. When I publish one, I send it to her. She sends it out to anybody who's on the list, and you'll get a email that, let's see, maybe I can find one quickly. Let's see here. Yeah, here's one here. This is a More FYI. I didn't pay attention to what date I published it, but it's a fairly recent one. I think on 2538 is the last one. So here's 2536. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've had them grow over the years. And all you got to do is, if you're reading through this and you come across one that you like the subject and any subtopic line there, just click on the URL link. It'll open up in a new tab in your browser. Personally, I go through the whole list. Then I go back to the tabs I opened up and read the articles. It's your poison. I even have Raspberry Pi stuff in here, other small board computer stuff at times, some product information, etc. Because a lot of people just are out of the loop on what the hell's going on in technology. I also have our Beata put out TFS announcements. There's two newsletters per week. TFS stands for Tech for Seniors. It's a great meeting every Monday morning in Central Time Zone for some of us. It starts at 10:30 with the open meetup. The presentation starts at 11 o'clock Central Time and goes for 1 hour exactly, and then 20 minutes of Q&A. And they cover quite a smorgasbord of information that seniors might want to know about and get interested in. They other is from the Computer Club of Oklahoma City. They have various things that go on that may be of interest to some people, and they try and be open to the group as well. So that, and there's a bunch of other groups that I attend meetings on. STUG down in Florida, Central Florida Computer Society, uh, BCUG out of New Jersey, Ocean City, I think it is. Besides APCUG, I'm well involved with that, especially now that they have a Linux group that they never had before. I missed, I think, not quite, but almost the first year of their Linux group. I didn't know about it, and that was my own fault. But it gives you some idea. I believe in going to some of the other groups because I find different knowledge, interests, and perspective. To me, 80% of almost everything people say and do is pretty common. It's the 20% that is individual slant or view based upon their education, their upbringing, other work and societal contexts they have. That's how individual perspective gets into everything. And one of the things that some people are quite concerned about on the AI front is there are in a lot of the formulas that are used by various applications besides AI, chats and so forth, show a lot of bias. And the bias comes from the individual who coded that and their perspective on things. When it comes to tools in Windows, I don't use one cleanup tool. Even in Linux, I use two different tools. I use BleachBit and I use Stacer. They see things, many things the same, and I use both of them because they each see things the other one does not see. And this is very true in Windows. I use 4 or 5 programs to clean out as much garbage as I can each month. And so I have lots of tools there, more than I have in Linux. But in general, most of these OSs collect a lot of trash. Every time you get an update or an upgrade to your operating system, I don't care what platform it is, you are going to have a lot of trash left over that's obsolete. It leaves behind in the upgrade. And you've got to have tools to get rid of that garbage because some of it is fairly easy and the tools may be there, but some of those are command line tools, not GUI tools. In Windows, there's the cleanup manager, and that is a I'll call it a semi GUI. It's a roundabout way to get to it, but I can run it from the command line and have it up and going and do exactly the same thing. It'll show me a small GUI interface to select what I want to clean out of Windows that it covers. But if I run it first and I run, say, CCleaner or Glare Utilities Cleanup, they all find additional stuff that the other previous ones didn't find. That's why I run a number of programs. But that's utilitarian type of programs. It keeps my operating system as clean and slim as possible, and therefore the system performs better than it would if you just keep running it and you never remove the trash. It gets slower and slower and slower and slower. So what some people do, like Al Cheeks, he takes his Windows system, every 6 months he backs up his data as an extra feature. He backs that up normally anyhow. He blows everything on the hard drive away. He reinstalls Windows. He reinstalls all his application programs, and then he puts a copy of his data back on, and he goes for another 6 months. That's his way of getting around doing cleanup on a running basis that I do. It's personal choice. And that's what computers are, personal choice. I see you've been doing a whole lot of stuff, Bob, in the chat. I suggest everybody before we end the meeting here that you save the chat. That way.
Yeah, Earl just simply wanted to continue the discussion about various kinds of open source licensing, and this was fine. And this was a very little chat. I don't think the whole group needs to get in on it.
That's fine.
But what I'd also like to point out, just an additional cleanup tool for the Ubuntu family, including Mint, and that would be Ubuntu Cleaner, formerly known as Computer Janitor.
Okay.
One thing it does, Ubuntu's not very good at cleaning up old kernel remnants. And that's one of the things that this program can help a knowledgeable user do. Otherwise, you can just use it without cleaning up the kernels. You can check off whatever you need, just like you could with BleachBit or any of the other cleanup tools. Stacer.
Okay.
So it just reinforces what Tim was saying, that different cleanup tools see different things, and they can do different things.
Right. And it's just one of those things that you have to be aware of, conscious, if you will, and you have to understand that, especially when it comes to good old, oh boy, I'm having an issue unsharing from Mint. That's a new behavior that it hasn't had before. I stopped sharing, and you see that I stopped sharing, but if you were seeing my current Mint screen, you would think the sharing is still going on. Anyway, we're way past 9 o'clock, so yeah, and I know it's past Bob's bedtime. We don't want to keep him up any longer than necessary. He's
Busy
out
day today.
on the East Coast, so he's in Eastern time. But in general, like I said, go to chat, click on it. Down at the bottom bar, you'll see 3 little horizontal dots. Click that, and you can select Save Chat. And when the meeting closes, you'll get a copy of everything that went in chat, and you can review it and use what you want. It puts it in your Documents folder under a subfolder called Zoom, with a subfolder for today's Zoom meeting, and then you'll find a text file there. Anybody got any last minute things?
Looks like Bob's got a hand up.
I just wanted to comment, Tim. I'm sure you're all aware of it, and probably most of your crew there is. All of the APCUG weekly sessions, including the Chrome and all the others they do, are available on YouTube, particularly if you're a member of an APCUG organization like yours is and mine is.
Correct. And I've used that quite extensively, especially for the Linux group. But right now, we lost John Kennedy, at least temporarily. So they had to cancel this month's Linux workshop. Hopefully,
Yes.
he'll be fine and back to normal next month.
Okay.
I have another meeting to run to.
Okay.
Hope to see you next month.
And
Thanks
I'm
for letting me
closing
join you.
out anyhow. All right. Talk to you later.